School District. We'll begin with the flag salute, and I will lead that. Please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll go to agenda item 2, adoption of the agenda as submitted for possible action.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Trustee Swerzik, seconded by Trustee Green. Do we have any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and the motion carries. Agenda item 3, superintendent's report for information only. Mr. Stokes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I am delighted tonight to introduce you once again to the class sponsor of our leadership class, Miss Ann Britt, and she has with her some delightful young people to introduce.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. I am introducing you our homecoming king and queen. This is Hannah Golick and Toby Areola. And I'll talk a little bit really quickly about homecoming, what happened and what's going on, and they're going to talk to you a little bit about their favorite parts of it. We started off the previous Friday with an assembly, had the entire student body in the assembly, and it went really well. Our theme this year was Carson Palooza, so it's kind of artsy and music oriented. Our Monday activity was a bonfire with club activities, which the bonfire didn't actually happen. It was too windy, so we had to postpone that, which was okay. It still worked out okay. Tuesday we had lip sync, which was a great turnout. Really good acts this year. Wednesday was Wednesday Night Live. Thursday we had our tailgate and our JV and freshman football game, and we resumed the bonfire then. And then Friday we had our crowning, our king and queen, and our football game. And Saturday we had our dance.
Hi guys. So I don't know, this week was so much fun. It's hard to really choose a favorite part, but if I had to choose my favorite part of this week, it would probably be lip sync on Tuesday. I was an act with a few other people, including Edson, and our lip sync group actually won. And I'm not like a get up on stage, act crazy type of person, and like that was what I did on Tuesday night. And so that was like a little bit outside of my comfort zone, and that I really enjoyed it. So, yeah.
My favorite part of this week, it was probably Wednesday Night Live. I was in a couple of skits, and it was really fun to work with those people because everyone in that group is just really, really funny. You say one thing, and it's just everything's hilarious to them. So it was really funny to work with Wednesday Night Live, and everyone seemed to enjoy it in the crowd. I mean, we have like a lot of popular skits that people end up enjoying, so it was really, really fun. And I really like the environment and the acceptance this year, so it was really, really fun. A lot different than I had expected. Yeah.
I just want to add that this year's group of candidates was like
Diverse.
the best. Well, like first of all, we were really diverse, but it was like the best group of candidates. We all like pretty much got along really well. We all had a really good time, I would say, together. So yeah, it was a really good week.
Okay, do we have any questions?
Well, I'd just like to ask both of you, what are your next steps now? What are you doing next year?
I plan on going to college next year. I am interested in studying like biochemistry or medicine. I'm not like quite sure yet, but yeah, that's what I plan on doing. College.
I want to go to this University of Oregon. Well, I want to go to Oregon State University, and I want to major in women and gender studies and minor in political science.
Go ahead.
So I just want to say congratulations. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were you warm enough out there? It was cold.
It was freezing. It was really cold on Friday. I mean, even the boys were cold in their like pants and jackets, and we were cold in dresses. But we had blankets, and then we just walked, and then when we got off, we got back into our blankets, so it worked out okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations also. I heard good things about the whole week. The students really seemed to have a good time. My kids, well, my one remaining kid called it the non-bonfire a bonfire, and she said it was still fun. And, yeah, they had a good time. And I got to attend lip sync, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think you guys, just having the courage to get up on stage and, like you said, break out of your comfort
Yeah.
zone is, good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations, and it sounds like it was a great week.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Stokes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I have just one other item. I hope you had a chance to take a look at our electronic newsletter. Mr. Davis tells me that nearly 16,000 people were on the list, and this software program that he has that is, I guess, powering this process is pretty amazing. And so we have the ability not only to allow people who received our electronic newsletter to either unsubscribe or to send it to someone else who would like to subscribe. And so it's really a powerful tool, and we're looking for feedback. Obviously, it has the capacity of being able to be translated into Spanish or any other language. And so we're anxious to know how that worked, whether or not it was a good process, and certainly we're interested in knowing if we came close with content, and we obviously want to make sure that that's relevant to our families and to our patrons. And so any feedback that you have along that line, students, would be very helpful. So that's my report. Thank you.
Does anyone have any feedback on the newsletter? I had a chance to read it today, and I thought it was really well done. And I did try to translate it into French, and I could read a little bit of what I remembered from French. So I don't know if it's accurate, but
Your skills.
I took French, so there is some memory of stuff in there. But anyway, I recognize some of the vocab words. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 4, board reports and board member comments for information only. Let's start with our Pioneer High School representative, Sienna Fletcher.
Thank you, members of the board. There will be a construction career day field trip in Reno on Thursday, September 28th. Please make sure all your field trip forms are turned in to the office by tomorrow. Pioneer High staff, there will be a staff photo this Friday at 7:15. A reminder to all students, there is no school on Monday, October 2nd. On Friday, October 6th, Mr. Lorien will be taking students to Rocksport. The sign-up form is outside his room, A5. Flu shots will be available at Pioneer on Friday, October 6th during B2. Thank you, and this concludes the activities, events, and announcements for Pioneer High School.
Thank you.
Question.
Okay, go ahead.
With there's construction going on over there at Pioneer. Is it interfering with any of your academic studies?
Actually, no. It actually hasn't started yet. They're still doing the planning, but that should start by, I think, December.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our Carson High School representative, Edson Lemus.
Thank you, members of the board. So first off, I have an update on National Honor Society. Yesterday was the induction ceremony, and it ran very smoothly. Lots of people showed up. We had some cake. It was really fun. Also, with NHS, our blood drive has been scheduled to be October 25th. All the members are in charge of finding a donor, either themselves or somebody else. So if you know somebody in the Honor Society, please approach them because that'd be appreciated. Now going on to sports, the football team, varsity, has a game this Friday versus Galena at Galena. The volleyball team, they have a game today. Actually, I think it's going on right now at Minogue. They also have a game on Thursday, the 28th, versus Damani Ranch at Carson High School. Cross country, the JV championships aren't until October 17th, but that's at Golden Eagle Park. And then the league championships are October 20th at Rancho San Rafael. So soccer for varsity boys, there's a game tomorrow versus Minogue at Minogue. There's also a game this Saturday, the 30th, versus Damani at Carson. And for girls, it's the same. There's a game today versus Minogue at Minogue, and they have a game on Saturday as well versus Damani Ranch at Carson. For tennis, the boys, they had a match today versus Worcester at Carson, and the girls had a match today versus Worcester at Worcester. And they both have a game or a match on the 28th versus Douglas, but it's different. Like the girls go to Carson, the girls stay in Carson, and the boys go to Douglas. And like Ms. Britt said, homecoming went really well with us. It was a very eventful week. Other events, we are still planning some stuff for the fall. I know academic letters in there somewhere. But that's all I got. Thank you. And that concludes the Carson High School board member thing.
Thank you for your report. And I attended the National Honor Society induction last night with Trustee Swerzik and Trustee Casiopo, and it was a very nice ceremony for them. So great. And if you would like to donate blood, go ahead and come down and do it. They want your kid and your blood and everything. So, okay, we'll go ahead to Nevada Association of School Board reports. And Stacy usually does this. She's not here, and so I could just update you that on September 16th, I attended training in a director's executive committee meeting and encourage you to register for the conference in November and the training that will be there. And also, we got some update. There was a family engagement training and also a presentation on the performance ranking star system and what the Department of Education is thinking about doing with that. So that's what we learned. And I could update you more if you'd like to. Do we have any, we'll go ahead and move to member reports now. Trustee Carini.
Mrs. Zona, principal of Seeliger Elementary, would like you to know that Seeliger had a wonderful Watch Dogs launch event this last Tuesday. And what that is the dogs stand for dads of great students. Dads volunteer time at school reading with students, greeting them in the mornings, watching, playing at recesses, and just being an overall positive influence and role model. Over 100 dads showed up, including the lead dog, Andrew Fueling. Was the lead dog, and for the pizza launch evening event. And as time allows, maybe Andrew will let us know what the lead dog actually did there. Also, I've cleared my mantle, and I'm ready for a pumpkin at the Pumpkin Patch, Seeliger Elementary, October 14th, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Everyone is welcome. Hope to see you there. And this is just not any pumpkin patch. It is the 25th annual pumpkin patch. So come and get your pumpkin. There's games, there's arts and crafts, fun for the whole family. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Trustee Casiopo.
Just for the record, I will be referring to Mr. Fueling as lead dog from here on out in all my written and verbal correspondence. I just wanted to reiterate National Honor Society. It was, like President Crossman said, it was fantastic. And just to give you an idea, I don't know the number of kids, but they all line up kind of shoulder to shoulder as they call their name. And they fill up the entire gymnasium, the front wall, the back wall, and one of the side walls. I don't know what that amounts to, but it's well over 100 students if I estimate correctly. So really, congratulations to all of them and their parents, because what a great night that was. I think Nick Morano was the keynote speaker. He's the city manager. Did a nice job with that. Kind of tied it into current events. So I thought all in all it was a good night. We mentioned lip sync, that went on. That was the whole week, I think last week was really a fun time for the students. Couple of quick notes for the high school specific. There's a FAFSA meeting. If you don't know what that is, if your kids are getting ready to go to college, you pretty much have to fill this thing out, whether or not you're eligible for money or not. Because if you don't fill it out, you're not eligible for anything, loans, grants, scholarships that a school offers. It's not an easy application to fill out. So attending a meeting to get an idea of what it's all about is a good idea. That's Wednesday, that's tomorrow, the 27th, room 257 at the high school during lunch. Also, there's a Rotary Foreign Exchange Program meeting tomorrow, 11 a.m. at the guidance office. So if any students are interested in seeing what it's like to go to school overseas, this is a good opportunity to get some information. And then Army ROTC scholarship, the deadline's October 1st. So if you're interested in serving, and I think it's the National Guard or the Army Reserves, go into the guidance office and find out some information about that. There's a website that you get onto, and they can tell you what that is. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. Trustee Walker?
Hot off the presses. So Fremont is super excited about the Week of Respect, and so they're planning on having the kindergartners and fifth graders partner in spelling respect, and I'm guessing that that's like linking arms and spelling the letters with their bodies. And Mr. Ma is actually going to bring his drone to the school and take a picture of Fremont's respect chain. So, and that concludes my report this evening.
Are they going to play Aretha too? I don't know.
Dr. Ward, are you going to play Aretha Franklin is the question from Trustee Crossman.
Thank you. Trustee Swerzit?
Just one quick announcement, and that was the Carson High Open House. It was really something special to see not only students and parents, teachers, but other community partners and vendors that came to offer assistance. And I thought it was, just well done. And I think Tasha, should be commended, as well as everyone that took part in that. That went off really well. The next day was not so well when the power went out, but that day of the open house was really something special.
Well, and I would just add, I appreciated everyone coming to that because that was the night of the hailstorm and the tornado warning and everything. So that was great that many people came out with the weather. Trustee Green.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Mr. Stokes and the district office for advocating for our place in the growth in this community and fighting for school land. So I hope we keep it up, and I think it's the right thing to do. I know it's not mostly public, but I wanted to put it out there that I think you guys are doing a good job of doing that. So thank you.
Thank you. And I will just update for Fritch Elementary School. They are starting their Week of Respect this Friday, September 29th, and that will carry over through the next week. And also next Wednesday, October 4th, is the Walk to School Day. So you can meet Mr. Brown and Mr. Farnworth at the corner of Winnie and Ormsby at 7:45 a.m. And that's there's a grassy area right there by Silver Oak where they meet, and then they walk to school. And also October 6th is Dudes and Donuts, starting at 7:30 a.m. So just bring your dude, whoever you want to, and eat some donuts that morning. So that's what they're calling it. So that concludes my report for the schools. And do we have any other in this area? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 5, association reports for discussion only. No, Mr. Wallace? No? Okay, no association reports, so we'll move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment today? If not, I won't read the whole paragraph, and I'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 7. And this is presentation of the 2017-2018 Carson City Health Department flu vaccination clinics to be held in the Carson City School District for discussion only. Sheila Story and Carrie Rowe? Okay. The I threw me for a loop on how to pronounce that one.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President and members of the board and district office. Thank you for having us tonight. Tonight we're going to be presenting to you the flu vaccination program that is school-based in each school. This is our 9th year doing the flu vaccinations within the schools, and we just want to give you a report and an update on how it's going and just the flow. It's actually a really great program. We've had a pretty good success for the last 9 years. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Carrie Rowe. She's the Public Health Preparedness Planner, and Jeannie Friedman, she is the Public Health Preparedness Director for the Carson City Health and Human Services. I must say, the Carson City Health and Human Services has been wonderful with the school district. We have a very good working relationship. They help our students out a lot. They help promote programs through their community health and also with the school district. So I'd like to thank them for their continuing support of our students and their health and their safety. So with any further ado, here is Jeannie Freeman to present.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, distinguished board members, for having us this evening to come and talk to you a bit about the school-located vaccine program that we do as a partnership between Carson City, Health and Human Services, and the school district. As Sheila mentioned, we've been doing this with you for 9 years, and I know that we've been here at many different board meetings giving this presentation, so thank you again for having us this evening. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions. So we partner actually with school districts around the Quad County area. We're actually the Quad County Preparedness Program. And for a number of years, if you can recall back to the H1N1 pandemic that literally occurred around the world, this partnership became even more important than what it was before then, and we've seen continued growth in the participation and the appreciation in the community for us being able to be in the school district, and we really are so grateful to you for allowing us to come into your school district to offer this service to your students and to your staff. As I'm sure you all are quite aware, healthy students are more educated. They are, because they're in school more often, there's less interruption with that instruction. They don't lose out on that time. And so the idea, especially with the flu, we kind of take it for granted that it's, oh, it's just the flu. I'll go to the store and get some medicine for it. But it's actually a very serious disease and can be a big problem. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, flu and pneumonia as a unified category is the 8th leading cause of death in this country even today. So we've moved away from a lot of times of those contagious diseases, and we think about heart disease and cancer, but this is still in the top 10. And so it's important for us to remain immune and to try to get those flu vaccinations. That's actually what's recommended by the CDC each year. Most of the children who have died from the flu in the United States from 2010 to 2014 were unvaccinated. A vaccination provides some additional protection. It's not a guarantee. We do not claim for it to be a guarantee, but it does provide additional protection, not only for the person who's having the vaccine, but those who are around them, because there are certain populations that have increased risk and may not be able to receive the vaccine, whether it be due to an allergy or being immunocompromised and so forth. So we try to make sure that those who are healthy can receive the vaccine and make it as accessible as possible so that they can help keep the rest of the community well as well. That doesn't sound great as the grammar. Apologize. In a study that was published out of Boston Children's University, they were looking at a comparison of children who reported to the emergency room and were reporting with complications associated with the flu. And they were also doing some comparisons with children in Canada. Because as you notice there up on the screen, starting in 2006, the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention started making a recommendation that even preschool children become vaccinated with the flu on an annual basis. But as you notice up in that top bullet, it indicates that the complications associated for those who had the flu vaccine were not as great as those who had not been vaccinated. And those complications, when we think of the flu, really that respiratory, a lot of times we think of fever and body aches, but those respiratory issues are really important. And we see more children with asthma. We see more complications with poor air quality in some other communities, not necessarily Carson City, but we do see some of those challenges, and so those create greater complications for children who have the flu and who are not vaccinated. So rates of flu infection nationwide are actually highest among school-age children. I myself have 2 school-age children. I refer to them affectionately as my little germ mongers because if they bring something home, it's guaranteed that it's going to pass through the house. And our school-age children, they're wonderful. They love to share, and we encourage them to share and to be friendly and to respect and link arms together to spell respect chains and so forth. And we love that, and that's what's great about them. But at the same time, their sharing is also a possible contagious issue. So again, the flu vaccine can be an important tool, not the only tool, but an important tool in that toolbox that we utilize. As you are aware, school enrollment across the United States makes up a vast majority of our population. Over 1 in 5 people in this country are enrolled in school and are attending. And so that's just those who are enrolled. So then you add the staff on top of it, and we have even a greater percentage that are in schools on a regular basis for a number of days throughout the year, more than half the year. So when we have the opportunity to go into the school district, as you all have afforded us, and we have the opportunity to offer flu vaccinations, then it also provides greater immunity for the overall community. It saves parents and families a lot of time. It helps reduce some of those other complications that tend to come with the flu as people recover, then ear infections happen, or other respiratory challenges become into place. And we don't like to have to encourage those doctor visits, and we certainly don't want that absentee time away either. So for a long time, the health field used to call this idea of vaccinating some for the benefit of all. We used to call it herd immunity. It kind of refers more to animals. It seems, just really not appropriate with that. And now we've really kind of changed it to what it really does mean, and that's that community immunity. And it's, rolls off the tongue. It has a nice little rhythm to it and rhyme, but that's really what we're asking for, is for that opportunity to do that. So when we do the school-located vaccine clinics, we try to really minimize the time that they're out of the classroom. We don't want to interfere with the instruction. We know that teachers have a lot to do, and we know that their time is precious with those kids every day. So technically, it takes us about 15 minutes to immunize a class of students, which really isn't that long. We bring a lot of staff. If the school nurse is available, she or he assists us with that process. Sometimes we have the PTOs or the PTAs assisting us with running to classes because they know which teacher's room is where and helping to get the kids to where we're doing the vaccinations. We set up in a variety of places within the school, wherever it's convenient for the school. And then we're there before school hours and after school hours to make sure that we also offer the vaccine to staff, so that we can make sure that if it's something that they want, that it can be convenient for them as well. We do this because we know what it takes as parents and as guardians of our children to take the time off work to try to get into your doctor's office. And frankly, when it comes to the clinics and the different places that you can get your flu shot, or even at a doctor's office, none of them can support the actual number of people that we have in our community to do all those vaccinations. So at the health department, we like that partnership to be able to do that. So I'm not going to run through this. You can read this and so forth, but we start planning with what we do in the fall. We start planning for this in the spring. So literally we get done with our flu vaccination clinics. We do all of them with all the school districts in the 4 counties, except for, 3 counties, because we don't do Lyon County School District. But we do the 3 counties, and we do a lot of community events all in the month of October. And then we're busy doing data entry, and we're doing analyses, and we're doing all those sorts of things. And then as soon as that's done, we start preparing again. So we're having contact with our wonderful lead nurse, Sheila Story, and she gives us ideas, and she starts communicating with principals about possible next dates for the following fall, realizing that your school calendar is not approved at the time that we start planning. But nonetheless, it's good for us to start having those conversations, because we can start making sure if it's something that we're doing a good job with and you want us to continue, then we can do that. If there's something we need to improve upon, it gives us time to make sure that we're doing that. So we send out all kinds of forms and packets, and then we also have stuff on our website for families to be able to read if they have questions about the flu, what's going to be available, what the flu shot might consist of this year. And then Sheila and her school nursing team, they reach out and they work with the principals and the admin staff at each of the schools to send out reminders for students. And they also make sure that they're making phone calls, because we will, for the convenience of parents, bill insurance. We'll bill Medicaid, we'll bill all the private insurances and so forth, but no one's turned away if they have an inability to pay. So we are there for doing, again, the community effort. On vaccination day, we make sure we have lots and lots of stickers, because we need to make sure that there's some sort of reward that goes with getting the flu shot. And I myself have a child who is 11 and absolutely cringes every time, and I'm getting he's getting too strong. I really can't hold him down anymore. So now I get to send his father to go and do that shot. But we get a lot of assistance, and again, another way that we really appreciate that partnership with the school district. So to kind of give you some statistics, I wanted you to see what we saw in 2015 as far as vaccinations that we did for Carson City School District and their staff. And then I'm also going to show you the 2016 statistics. So in 2015, you can see we have your enrollment numbers up there for the different schools that we had retrieved from the schools and from the school district, the number of vaccinated students and the non-vaccinated students. In this year, as far as students go, we had a vaccination rate of almost 24% of just the students, which is a great number that really helps out with the school district. And you can see total district-wide that we had about 2,400 vaccinated. You see in 2014, we vaccinated about 2,600, so we were slightly lower in that overall total. In 2016, we saw actually a drop. We had only about 18.8% of the students that were vaccinated in 2016. And we're really not sure what all of that might be, although 2016 was a year that the flu mist was no longer available. In 2015 and 14, we had the flu mist available. 2016, we did not, and the CDC has recommended against the flu mist again for 2017. So we will only be having the shots available. So that could possibly be some of the, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say, I think it's that, because I didn't want my elementary kids to get freaked out about the shot, where in the past they'd had the flu mist, so I took him to the pediatrician's office, and we had to hold down an 11-year-old last year, so sometimes that happens.
Sure.
But some of the older kids, that's not as much a concern, but I think that may be at least a good portion of that drop.
And it could be, we saw the reduction in the percentage of students. I know that your school district numbers, they fluctuate just like every school district with enrollment every year, and depending on what day is your census day makes a difference for you as well. But when you look at the vaccination, that percentage decreased quite a bit. And then we also saw a reduction in the number of staff that were vaccinated. And so we're really not sure, because until we had the numbers, we didn't have the ability to go back and poll why that might have been. But we suspect that flu mist is one of those challenges. But again, that community immunity is really important. And flu mist is not available anywhere this year either. So if they're going to choose to have a vaccination, it's going to be in the shot form, that whether they go to a clinic or they go to some other type of pharmacy location, or they go through us to do that. So we saw about almost 550 fewer doses of flu vaccine that we administered in 2016 compared to 2015. So again, I thank you for your partnership. For those of you who may not be able to attend one of the schools to have your vaccine, or your vaccination, if you choose to do it, we're also doing a community vaccination clinic on Saturday, October 14th at the Carson City Center, or Carson Senior Center, and it's open to everybody in the public. So I realize that that's the same day as the 25th anniversary of the pumpkin patch, but pumpkins need vaccinations too, I suppose. That could be a community immunity event. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at the health department. You can also contact my colleague Carrie, and then we have another colleague, Sandy Wartko, that is our public health nurse, and she helps all three of us lead these different projects. So we'll be in and out of those schools, and if you see us, please stop by and say hi. Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
This is a pretty important program, but let's go back to 9 years. Just the percentage of students getting vaccinated. I mean, the last 3 years looks like we're going down.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, where were we? I mean, you look at Carson High up here. We got 2,000. You have your
Yes, sir.
statistic, 2,135, and what, 300 or less?
Sure.
Are we going down, or have, in the earlier years, we had more, a percentage of those getting vaccinated, or?
Great question, and thank you for asking that. I don't have those numbers for you. I suspect that when you look at the percentage of somewhere between 18.8 and 21%, you're pretty much right in the range of the general population. So when you look at flu vaccinations, we tend to see that those who believe that they're healthy don't believe that they need a flu vaccine or that they don't need to protect themselves against the flu from other ways. And even healthy people get the flu. It's not just something that impacts the young or impacts those over the age of 65. One of the things that we're very proud of with the health department is that we also offer what they call high dose for those over the age of 65. And we bring that with us to all the schools so that if we have any staff that are with the district that are over the age of 65, we like to give them the high dose because that's what's recommended and gives them an additional level of immunity. As far as your numbers, when we had the H1N1 outbreak nationwide, so much attention went to the flu. People were out in the streets, standing around corners to get their flu shot. They would wait hours to get their flu shot. When we haven't had a crisis like that in our country, the memory tends to wane, and I suspect that you see that in a lot of different areas when people forget how bad it could have been and so forth. And that's kind of one of the great things about people is that they can forget the bad and remember to have the good. But when we look at it, we watch what happens around the world, and there are certainly some different flu strains that they're watching around the world that, they may turn into ones that we have to watch as humans. And so that's why this kind of falls under preparedness, because we're watching that to see if that's something that we would need to be cognizant of. And again, that partnership with the school district. But sir, I can definitely get you those numbers from 2000 or from the last 9 years and give them to you if you'd like, but I just don't have them with me tonight.
The only reason I'm asking is there something else that we can do as a school district to help promote or market this to help you? I mean, you're helping us.
Sure.
You're helping our students. You're helping our community. And it seems like we should be able to do something more.
Well, there are a lot of differing views about vaccinations in general, and a lot of people have different opinions associated with it, and we respect those opinions, and we respect, the research that's out there that, you can go onto either side. We are encouraging people to go with what the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends, which is an annual influenza shot or vaccination. But again, it's up to people to make that choice, and I think, from speaking from experience, if you've ever had the flu, you don't ever want to have the flu again. I don't care what strain it was. It's not something that you say, wow, this year I get it again. You're certainly not celebrating that. So it's one of those things. And again, like I mentioned, the flu vaccination is one of those tools that we use. Again, the other things that you guys and your teachers teach students, wash your hands. Cover your coughs. When you're sick, stay home. And those are some very important messages as well that go along with and help us when it comes to that community immunity. But the more we vaccinate and provide that opportunity for people to get those vaccinations, then the more we empower them to be able to have control of their health and make a decision that's best for them. And we can provide that information. And if they're not comfortable doing it at school or at a public event, then we encourage them to see their healthcare provider or to go to another location where they can get that vaccination. The other thing is if children miss school, if the day that we're at the school they miss, they can walk into the health department on any Thursday. We have open walk-in, no appointment necessary from 8:30 to 11:30 and from 1:30 to 4:30 to get vaccinations. So they can come in and they can get caught up. And I know that we worked with Sheila and her staff to make sure that kids were up to record in order for them to be at school the first day with all the vaccinations. And we continue to love that partnership with the school district.
Well, I'm just going to finish. Just thank you for your partnership.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This is, something that's badly needed. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Thank you. And I've been a parent volunteer helping to bring them, and it is really smooth and really slick. And for the most part, kids are not scared. Some of them even take it as a badge of honor when they get their Band-Aid and they show it off. If there's a kid that is... Yeah. So if there is a kid that's having a harder time with it, then they don't force them to get it. So it's a really easy position, or it's a smooth smooth experience for the kids.
And they get a really cool sticker that they get to choose from. So sold, right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Real quick, Mr. Swarzik, to help answer a question in regards to advertising and marketing, we have posters that the Carson City Health and Human Services has provided, and each school has some hanging up with the dates and locations, all that good stuff. We also have the flu vaccination form that goes home in all the Peachies. At the high school, they went home in the freshman transitions in all the history classes. And then we also have it on our website for the Carson City School District. We also send home a phone message a few days before the flu vaccination to help remind parents that the form did go home and what day and location the vaccination is going to be given to their children. So we really do try to do a lot of advertising and promotion of it. I know last year at Carson High School, the numbers were down because our phone message was not sent out. There were so many phone messages that had to go out that night that some of them were dropped. So I think Carson High School lost their opportunity for the phone message. So hopefully this year we'll be able to send it out. Other forms of advertisement, mainly word of mouth, that type of stuff. And all of our school nurses really try to promote it and let teachers know and give them heads up in regards to promoting it. So hopefully we do a better job this year in advertising and getting the word out, and hopefully our numbers will be up again this year.
Thank you very much. Okay. Did you have a comment?
No, I've known Jeannie for many years.
Okay, he's waving. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 8, presentation of the 2016-2017 Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, SBAC, results for the Carson City School District for discussion only. Dr. Ricky Medina. And
I'm
Susan
going to
Kima.
just start out with an introduction here. Tonight begins a series of presentations for the board on what it means to be, what are indicators to be college and career ready for our students. Most often we think about preparing our students to be college and career ready in high school, but in fact, for us, for the district, it starts in elementary school. Good attendance, good discipline, positive social and emotional relationships, promote, support workforce readiness skills, even in our elementary and middle schools. Measures of academic progress, the MAP assessment, the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, which is the SBAC, measure current academic ability. Tonight's college and career readiness focus will be on the Smarter Balance. In the future, we'll bring you a MAP assessment presentation because we've just taken our fall MAP assessment and Mr. Nate Ringham is analyzing that for our Read by 3 information. But tonight, we're focusing on the Smarter Balance assessment. I would like to introduce Dr. Ricky Medina, who will provide assessment overview.
So for our presentation tonight, we're going to have 4 parts. So the first part, I'm just going to kind of provide the hard numbers, just the facts. The second part, we'll talk about some areas that we've identified that kind of were in needs of improvement. The third part will be, what is our plan to move forward? And then we'll answer whatever questions folks have. Okay, so to start off, we'll start off with the district versus the state. So the top table is the state of Nevada. So for reading, just under 50% of the kids were proficient in elementary school. For math, it's just above 40%. For middle school, we have 47% for reading. I have an asterisk next to math, and we'll talk about math a few slides later. The end of course exam affects that 26% score. So we had 185 kids that took the end of course exam this year. So those 185, we didn't double test them. So they didn't take the Smarter Balance assessment. So we basically took our top 8th graders and had them take a different test instead. And that was a trend statewide. For Carson City, our numbers were just underneath the state averages for both reading and math at the elementary. Math, we have a little bit more room that we need to grow to catch up to the state. If we look at the national numbers for reading, if you look at the 13 states that we have data for, it pretty much goes up from Nevada's score up in the high 40s, up to just before 60% for ELA. Because I know somebody's going to ask, what are the top states scoring for ELA? So that's just under 60%. For math, it's just under 50%. Okay, so this is what it looks like by school. So you'll notice that there's some schools that have pretty high scores when you look at the state average. There's some of our schools that have some lower scores. So this right here is reading. If we were to compare this to last year's data, district-wide for ELA, our scores are down about 2%. So at the elementary level, Empire and Fremont, they had dips of 7 and 8% for ELA. The other schools in our district, pretty much they either went up by a percentage or two, but their scores are pretty much relatively the same. For math, this is what it looks like for our schools. So there were, Mark Twain, their score actually increased by almost 12 percentage points from the previous year. We had Seeliger and Fritch's score increased by about 7% from the previous year. Empire, their score went down by about 7 percentage points. Overall, for math as a district, our score was up about 2% from last year. So this is our special populations. So altogether, we had 3,395 students that took the Smarter Balance assessment. So in grades 3 through 8, that's kind of our total population. Our special ed students, we had 447 special ed students that took the assessment. Of those students, only about 16% were proficient in reading, and about 13% of those special ed students were proficient in math. So that's a big difference from our score for our general ed population. For English language learners, we had about 505 kids that took the assessment, and their pass rate was below 10%. Something to keep in mind with those kids is that the access test that they take to exit out of the English language program is a college and career ready test. So in order to exit out of the access assessment, you pretty much have to be at the skill level that you need to be proficient on the Smarter Balanced. So if you exited the ELL program last year, you have a chance of being in that 8.5 or 9.2%. If you're a level 1, 2, or 3, which means you don't have a lot of language proficiency, your chances of passing that test are pretty slim until you exit the program. Our free and reduced lunch population, which is about 55% of our kids district-wide, their scores, they scored 10 percentage points lower than their peers. So these are kind of 3 areas that we've identified that we really need to look at. Before we get into what we've identified, I want to share with you, this is our middle school end of course data. So as I said before, we had 185 kids that took this assessment and not the Smarter Balanced. So we had 2 kids that took the algebra assessment, and those 2 kids scored level 4, which is the highest you could get on that test. We had 1 student that scored at level 1 in the 8th grade, and we had 21 students that scored at level 2. For the end of course assessment, level 2 was considered proficient. So we only had 1 student that wasn't considered proficient on the end of course. Level 3 and above are considered college and career ready. So we had 163 odd kids that scored at level 3 or 4 on that end of course exam for algebra. So district-wide, pretty much 100% of our kids were proficient on that exam, and 88.1% scored 3 or higher, which when you look at those numbers compared to the rest of the state, we did fairly well. And I forgot to mention, there's 4 8th graders that took the geometry exam at Carson High School. They passed the end of course, but they're not included on this graph. So when we looked at our data, some of the things that we identified is kind of some areas that we need to focus on is, first off, when we look at the scores from school to school, there's some schools that are doing fairly well, and there's other schools that we need to provide them some additional support so that we could get their scores up. The same thing with our special subpopulations. I mean, yeah, for our level 1, 2s, and 3s, it's probably not appropriate to expect them to pass the test, but we need to get those numbers up a little bit higher. You want to join me on this one? So the plan going forward. So first off, I want to remind everybody that this is our first year for K through 8. We rolled out a new math curriculum. For K through 5, we also have rolled out a new science curriculum. I didn't talk about science tonight because it's one of the assessments that the students take in the 5th and 8th grade, but this was the first year that we did that science assessment, so it's going through the standard setting process. For K through, I'll let you talk about K3 for reading.
Sure. So just even talking about that plan going forward with the new math, science, and curriculum materials, as Dr. Medina said, last year we went through the curriculum process for both math and science, went through materials process, selection process, did a soft rollout in June, and then starting in August, had all the materials in everybody's hands and started math and science training will be going on throughout this year. Even though math and science is up there, it's a strategy because there's a lot of reading in both the math and new science standards, and it's required reading. So it's a different type of reading than just teaching reading, but it is requiring a lot of reading. Something else that goes along with that is that the 6th through 8th grade English language arts, their learning targets have been developed, and we're currently in a material selection process. So when we're looking at the middle school and what we're doing for them, you should see me coming to you before the board if you approve an amended budget in December, looking for some materials for English language arts, probably right in the new year. Also for elementary English language arts, we have our implementation specialists that are developing their learning targets as we speak. We hope to have a pilot in the spring. We will embark upon a material selection in the fall. So that is our timeline for that. We would have been probably in lockstep with math and science, with the exception of having to take a little time out for like a year to get organized with Read by 3. And we wanted to make sure that not only our implementation specialists did a nice job there, but our staff, our teaching staff that needed to implement Read by 3 would be with us as we work to improve scores for the district. So as far as going to Read by 3, K3, that's a strategy as well, because that is building our future, as well as our 3rd graders must take the SBAC. All struggling students that don't meet our grade level requirements will be implementing an individualized learning plans. What's going to be better about that this year is the fact that last year when we were learning about Read by 3, most of the plans went home because it involves parent collaboration and signatures, went home in November. I would say our best interventions were occurring starting in January. That's when I think people really were grasping on what needed to be done. This year, we already have our MAP data. We already have some intervention plans that have been passed up to the next teacher that just need revision. Every parent will have their plan at parent conferences in October, and interventions are already starting. Also, many schools are requiring intervention plans for 4th and 5th grade students, which directly affect progress on the SBAC. Empire and Fremont, as you saw what their scores look like, they're applying for a Nevada Department of Education Transformation Grant for this school year. I met with Valerie Dockery, our grant writer, Principal Susan Squires, Principal Jennifer Ward DeJoseph from Fremont yesterday for a pre-planning meeting to see what their suggestions were, what they wanted to do based on their data. And then tomorrow we're meeting again with a potential support provider in order to prepare for writing this grant. We will submit the grant in October, and probably by the time things get awarded from the state and we get up and going, it'll be November. As Dr. Medina pointed out, our English language learners, the goal is to increase the focus on exiting our ELL learners within 5 years. We want these students to progress one level each year. Just for your information, if you come to our country from another place and you do not speak hardly any English, you'd be a level 1. If you are exited at level 5, that means you're able to compete with your peers in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And there is a lot of growth that needs to happen between level 1 and level 5. The state has also changed that assessment, and as Dr. Medina said, that is a priority. You need to pass that assessment. We need to be exiting kids. They cannot be an ELL student for 8 years. They cannot be an ELL student for 7 years and expect them to pass the SBAC or the end of course. So those are some changes. Just going back to some of the earlier scores, just to let you know the state's expectation. As we look at their state improvement plan, the state's expectation for reading was to be at 51% for this year and 54% for next year. So you can see that we already have 3 schools that have met the 51% benchmark, and we have the same 3 schools that already will meet next year's benchmark. Though the Carson Middle and Eagle Valley hasn't hit that benchmark, remember 185 of our best students did not take the SBAC. So they're close. The math, the benchmark for the state was 36% for this year. You can see the state surpassed that. It's really kind of interesting. Districts, the state has had flat growth this year, and our district has mirrored that, as Dr. Medina has said that. Also, the state had higher expectations for reading achievement than math, and yet they surpassed their own benchmarks by more in math than they did in reading for the state.
Just a quick question. On the 185 eighth graders that took the end of course test, that was for math. Did they take the ELA test for SBAC?
Yes, they did.
Okay, so they didn't take the math, but they did take the ELA. Okay.
You know what, and I need to make that correction because I made it sound like as if they were out of the SBAC scores for ELA. Sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. They are out of the math SBAC scores. You can see for math for elementary, all but 2 schools met the state's 36% benchmark. And next year, the expectation is 37. So I would suspect with what's happening too, the state will probably be adjusting their benchmarks and their expectations, knowing that they themselves have surpassed their goal early on.
And then one other thing, this year, because the end of course is no longer the state, considered the state assessment, because it's now going to be a final exam, the students that were able to take just one test last year, this upcoming year, they're going to have to double test. They'll have to take the end of course, because that's considered now like a low stakes district assessment, and then they'll also have to take the Smarter Balanced assessment.
And one of our college and career readiness presentations will be just strictly on the end of course, so we can make sure you're informed of all the changes. But that's something for you to know. Is also a strategy. It's one that is expected from the state, that those students would take the SBAC next year, and that will look different for math for middle school. even if nothing else was done. Okay. Any questions?
I've got some comments. Now, I've been on the board now 6.5 years. Whether it's been the CRT or the SBACs, the same schools tend to rise to the top. Borderwick Bray, Carson Montessori. Borderwick Bray is a Title I school, and we're talking about all your free and reduced lunch. We're talking about English language learners. And Ricky, you made mention, across schools, we've got some deals. And we've got later on the agenda item, the Northwestern or whatever regional professional development. So 6.5 years, we're almost like going backwards. And I'm saying this, I'm trying to get this thing out of, going forward. Why can a couple of schools in our district, one being a Title I, consistently come to the top with all the criteria you've talked about, and others are not? Is there an explanation for this? There's got to be something that can take us forward. And year after year, there's always something, but it's got to end. Now, Richard and his goals, going forward, he's got some pretty hefty goals for both reading and math in the aspects. But where are we going, and why? And Ricky, you've been around. What's a possible explanation?
So I would say there's a couple things. I would say that back in the old AYP days, even though everybody hated AYP, when I first came to the district, there were a few schools that were struggling. They were kind of behind the pack. But with an focus on school improvement, that gap started to close. And I think if you look at our AYP scores at the beginning of AYP compared to the end, that gap between some of our schools was a lot different. That gap had started to close. As AYP kind of went away, and we haven't had test results for the past couple years, it wasn't clear what I don't want to say what the game is, but what rules we were supposed to be playing by. So I think now we have a new system. Now we know what the rules are. Now we have the focus for Fremont and Empire. I expect that gap will begin to close again.
Well, let's go to the Borderwick Bray and the Montessori. When you look at these schools, it doesn't matter whether it's the AYP or SBACs, they're at about the same level. Can you explain that?
So when we ended with our star ratings, all elementary schools except for Montessori they were 3-star schools. So that kind of shows you what Dr. Medina was talking about when we were closing the gap. They all ended with as a 3-star school. If you're going to say what's different, they have reading programs, they have interventions, they have highly qualified teachers. There's a difference in synergy.
Well, then.
That's hard to measure, but there is a difference in synergy. When you walk into a building and everybody is moving in the same direction, and there's that feeling, there's a target on these kids back in a positive way for the public, that these kids on their watch are not going to get away with achieving. It's not so much about all the peripheral stuff, it's about their focus on those kids. Sometimes there's that collegiality thing that occurs with people, how they support each other within school, but also outside of school. There's just that it factor that's really hard to capture. But that's what a good leader does with a school. They bring that synergy to that school.
And I mean, and I kind of have a thought along the lines of that, just with the turnaround grant that you're kind of working through for Fremont and Empire. You know, I'm not sure necessarily that bringing in an outside vendor, which is what's required, is going to improve the synergy of those schools. And so I'm not sure if that's going to confuse our efforts. And I think we really need to look at that.
Sure. So we have two of the principals here that are in that meeting. When we were meeting yesterday, we were really talking about what was their focus and how can we utilize that turnaround grant to increase the efforts of what they want to do. You know, Dr. Ward is new principal to that school. Susan Squires is only in her second year at Empire. There's a lot of relationship building, a lot of trust building to have your staff be behind you when you're climbing up that hill of achievement. That takes a little bit of time. And I agree with you, Mr. Walker, it's not always about an outside vendor. In this particular case, it's a vendor that we're currently working with, that we think in that formative assessment piece would help our teachers. So we're just kind of exploring the things that we have and what else they could do. We've already talked to the state about it because there's that other category that doesn't include necessarily a vendor off the state's list, if you know what I mean. Because, you know, in the old AYP days, at this stage in the game, 2 years into the data, the district still would have been in charge of being able to find a way to support the school. In this case, there's new leadership in both of our lowest performing schools. So to bring in an outside vendor because the leadership isn't doing what they need to do is really not common sense, because we need to give the two people that we bless to be put into those schools an opportunity to do what they're expected to do. There's a real tremendous sense of urgency to make sure our schools increase their scores. Our number one job is to make sure these kiddos, these students that are in our schools have opportunities when they're leaving us to have the world open to them. It doesn't always look great in the beginning, but this is one benchmark. I just came back from Washington, D.C., spent a week out there with the nation's Race to the Top grantees, and one of the biggest conversations we had were helping school boards understand that this is important. Meeting the bar is important, but there's also other benchmarks out there that are really important in making sure our students are college and career ready, because it's not just about the graduation rate anymore. It's about making sure that we can graduate kids, but not always are they prepared to be college and career ready. We need to make sure that what we do all along is to help them be college and career ready.
And I wanted to respond, I think that another thing, when we're looking at the schools, one thing we have to keep in mind is schools like Fritch and Seeliger, they don't have those same resources as the Title I schools. And so for a number of years, we're begging volunteers to do the tutoring at Fritch or Seeliger, whereas these other schools with their Title I funds are able to hire tutors that are in there working with their lowest performing students. And so I think we have to also look at the resources afforded to all of the schools, because it's really hard work to move those scores. And I'm not saying that we don't want to push for higher achievement. I think that's the goal everywhere. And in my mind, I think about a couple weeks ago, a meeting in Lyon County, and the superintendent told the teachers, what he basically said was, I believe if we're doing what is best for the students, those test scores are eventually going to come along. And I think that we can't lose sight that our job is to take these kids wherever they are and move them to the next place. And those scores might be slow to improve, but if we can look at our measures, and so like, even if the state doesn't have their act together and isn't saying what it's going to be to show that a school is performing well, we have data. I know in Carson City there's tons of data. And so an analysis could say, you know, we don't know what the state's going to do, but our third graders have grown by this percentage on these measures. And I think that we need to start looking at our own data to kind of prove our case also.
Thank you.
And I just have a comment. When we're comparing particularly the elementary schools, when I think back to the slide that you showed about our subpopulations and how few EL students are at the level, basically they have to be ready to exit the EL program in order to pass this. So I think for me to be able to say which school is performing better, I would need to know what percentage of the different subpopulations are at each school to help figure that out, because some of these schools may have significantly higher EL learners than others, or significantly higher free and reduced lunch. And so Title I is a certain standard, but it can vary between them. So that would be helpful if we're going to analyze where the difference, but a school that has a higher level of these subpopulations is going to have a harder time, because these subpopulations are the hardest kids to teach.
Their starting point is different.
Yes.
That's really important.
I misspoke. They're not the hardest to teach, but they're starting from, because they can all learn, but they're starting from a different place. Thank you for.
You know what else too, something that I was thinking about on the way over here is that with English language arts, when the state rolled out the new standards for English language arts, they were more similar to the previous state standards in many ways because of whatever requirements the state was going through with AYP at that time. The math seemed to garnish a lot of attention. The math was very different when it rolled out. And a lot of time and attention was spent almost thinking like people didn't know how to teach these new math standards. And no, the number is not high, but our percentage of surpassing the state required benchmark was higher than the reading. And so I think that like I said, this year I was talking with Mrs. Squires yesterday or the day before, and she said her teachers are just like all over those intervention plans already. They know exactly what they need to do for these students. And the reading implementation specialists went to dyslexia two-day conference up at UNR on dyslexia. They're going to be providing that training to our district teachers. They were working with the school psychologist to create an intervention list, because that's something that our teachers say time after time. We need more interventions, or we need more intervention ideas for our toolbox, because sometimes kids can blow right through them real quick and they don't work. They don't all work. So you got to find that right one that works for the individual. Also, our parent engagement goal, this is going to be a real focus this year in our schools, because when I talked to one of the districts when I was out in Washington, D.C., I said, what was the one thing that made the difference? And they said, we just kept steady with what we were doing as far as the academic piece at school, because our systems were in place, but then we involved the parents. They made it that much more mandatory to make sure the parents understood where their students were in relation to other students, without names, without violating FERPA, but letting them see where their child stood in relation to the class and to the grade levels. So that's also something that we're working on. We have a team that is looking at how to take the district strategic plan goal of family engagement and really deepen it with academic goal setting with our parents and our students in the classroom, following the Washoe parent-teacher teams model.
So looking at like our neighbors, Story County and Douglas County, and comparatively, they're much more impressive than we are on their scores here. Is this a simple demographics or socioeconomic issue? Should we be going next door and saying, "What are y'all doing?" Because I think that's what Trustee Swerzik's saying too. After so many years, we had the same discussion last year. Our scores are terrible. We need to just say they're bad, and then stop making excuses and identify exactly where we can go.
Right, that's what we were doing here tonight. Nobody's making excuses. We're just telling you what our next steps are because we aren't here bragging about these scores. These are not something to brag about. Story County has one ELL student. One. When I did some work down in Douglas County regarding ELL, they do not have the numbers or the percentage in their population that we do. Our ELL numbers, our percentage, mirrors Washoe and Clark. We might mirror other districts in size, but our demographics are not like Douglas. They're not like Lyon County. They're not like Elko County. They mirror Washoe and Clark.
That's what I was going to say. On the English Mastery Council, Carson City has about 20% of the population EL learners, and Douglas County has 8%. So it's difficult when you see how few EL learners are capable, because they just don't, by definition, have the proficiency to pass that test. It does make a difference, where it's easy to compare because we're comparable in size and neighbors, but there's quite a bit of difference.
And while we may be talking
real
about
quick.
other things, I just want you to know that that's not for making excuses. It's for making sure the board's aware of where we fit in the state and where we fit with what's going on with our demographics and our processes to others. Like I said, there is an urgency now that I see out there that wasn't there for quite a few years. We had that urgency with AYP because people knew what we were expected to do. When you're building processes, you're not receiving data, it's hard to keep that team going at that upper level when they didn't know what they were shooting for. Now everything's in place. I told Mr. Stokes earlier this year, really, everything's in place. We just need to be out observing, walking with those principals, working with them with their data, because everything is built.
My question was somewhat rhetorical. I understand the populations, but why don't we get a snapshot of how we're doing when we don't have obstacles in front of us? When we're teaching the children that didn't start from a different spot, however we're going to say it. You know, a better breakout of the data would be better, because I see this, well, then what's our numbers? Minus 300 or 3,395 students, you know? Is our percentage much better? Are we on par with the counties around us that don't have the same special populations? I think we didn't even get anything in our packets. I had to print out something from a board report a few weeks ago. A little bit of preparation to us, it always feels to me like you're hiding something. When I get nothing in my packet and we're coming into SBAC scores, it's kind of bad. You know, I would like to be able to look at this stuff. Maybe I could digest it. Maybe I could call you and we can have some of this discussion one-on-one. To just do it here, it's like I just have to wait until we're sitting here. I think it's bad for us.
Okay, point well taken. I think that's a very good suggestion, because we were no excuses. Point well taken.
And that's why I was suggesting using our data to really show the case, because to show, okay, so this is our score overall by the SBAC, but we have these additional measures that we're using, end of course exams in this grade level and at this, these courses at the middle school, and here's how our ELL population has grown throughout the year, to show that upward trajectory so that we kind of have that sense ourselves. It's really hard when you look at this to get the true sense of progress. And so that's why I was suggesting really delving into that data and telling our case.
And I think Trustee Walker, I agree with that. We would like to see some upward trajectory, and we see some with some of our schools, but the majority of our schools have a downward trajectory based on last year's results and this year's results. And when we say we're most comparable to Clark and Washoe, we're significantly below both of those counties in math and reading. And I think all the plans we have in place, they make sense to me. I don't want to pretend I understand all the aspects of all of them. But, it makes sense. We have to stay on top of it, but we got to find a way to make a jump and get up there. And I know as a part of these results, we're all going to go back and the district's going to talk to the school administrators, and the school administrators are going to pull the teachers together in training and whatnot. And the end result is, I think these teachers are going to have more data entry and things to do. And I would argue that if that's the direction we're going, that's going to be a mistake. I hope that doesn't happen. I want to see these teachers have more time to teach. And of course, if they need assistance, we want to provide them the assistance, because I think a lot of these teachers could turn these scores around just simply by having more time to teach these kids. And some aren't going to be able to, and they're going to need some help. But I think that's not the end-all solution, but that's part of the whole equation.
Well, we're not here to be, we don't take this in a negative light. We're just in a realistic light, though, I think we need to take it. And Sue, you said something about the synergy. I've gone to a number of these schools, and it seems like all the teachers want to do well. Certainly the principals want to do well. Susan is new at Empire, but there's been a few changes at Boardwalk Bray. You were there, Valerie Dockery, Karen Sims. Now we have a new principal, but still all the way through, it's been the leader. And I would like personally, if you could come back, and Ricky, you could be part of this, to really come back and say, here is what we're going to do. If it's synergy is here's what we can do to help. And this is where Richard comes in as the leader of the, as our superintendent. Somebody's got to come in and say, here it is. Do we need to have some people come from these other schools just to say, here, not make it complicated, but here's what we're doing for the benefit of the kids. And Mike, you say about the additional resources in the Title I schools. Well, we got other Title I schools that are not doing quite that well, and they've got all the resources.
You're right.
So, I think you've got to bring back something to the board, and you've had some maybe some steps, but bring us back something that is going to move this mark now. Finally, it's got to be moved. Something is just not lining up. So if you could bring us back something, and Richard, you be part of this, what we're missing something, and I don't know what that is. It's not a perfect world, but we're missing something. And Ricky, if you've got any ideas, please just bring them back so we can, as policymakers.
Shout them out.
No, we can go back and say, yeah, we can make a policy decision on going forward. So.
With that, I guess where I'm going with it, same, like, if it's our special populations that we need to do something with, then that's what we need to do something. Or like when we've discussed standardized test scores and all this stuff, also, before, maybe there has to be an acceptable loss rate too. Like ELL, if by nature of the program, they're not going to be proficient enough to pass the proficiency test until they're out of ELL, why would we even regard them in our total score? And that's not to leave them behind, but it just doesn't make sense if understanding where they're starting from and where we need to get them to even do that. That's kind of ridiculous for us to even count. Now I understand the state does some of this stuff, but we can very easily break it out for ourselves to make more sense of it. And I think we're all intelligent, logical, reasonable people, but you got to give us a chance to use it. Otherwise, we got nothing.
And I mean, I just want to say, and I see Susan Squires and Jennifer Ward standing back there. And I think that as our principals listen to this dialogue, I think we want to make sure that our teachers don't feel like they're being blamed, because this truly has to be a consensus building. We have to get all hands on deck, and we have to, it's going to take some positive energy to turn things around. And I think that I think sometimes these teachers feel like they're blamed. And then, and that's just what we hear. And so then they kind of start from a place of shutting down. And so as we examine how we're going to take these next steps and build that capacity, we want to make sure that it's in an uplifting, positive manner, is my suggestion.
Thank you. I think I've got two principals behind me that would like to say something, and I know Ruth Lee is here too, and if she even wants to say something about how they rose their math scores by 11 points, that's might give you another idea, Mr. Swerzik, of what people have been doing.
I guess I can open this up for public comment, if anyone would like to make public comment, and then we can have discussion on that.
So good evening, guys. My name is Ruth Lee Clary. I'm the principal at Mark Twain Elementary School. And we did show growth. And Mr. Walker, I appreciated your comment about it as a process, because this growth did not happen overnight. It was a long process that started 4 years ago when I took over as principal. And the process was this: we had our teachers starting to focus on one student, and they chose based on their MAP scores. They looked at students that were below the proficiency line, and they chose 2 students to work with. At that, they looked at their data ongoing. They made interventions based on that data, and they monitored their progress. As a result of that very first year, we grew 5 percentile points over the 50% mark, and made some growth. But it didn't show much growth in the area of SBAC, but it did show in MAPS. The next year, we followed the same process. And over a 2-year time period, we saw almost 10 percentile points over the 50th percent mark of kids that are proficient, that are showing growth. In that, I think it's helped our SBAC scores. And so this year, our teachers have been able to see that progress. They've been able to see what their work has done on how they focus with that, and came into school ready to do that same process because they could see the results of their hard work. I have to say, the teachers, I know every teacher in the district is like that, and I feel very proud of the teachers and the responsibility that they take in regard to their commitment level to the students they have in their classroom. And it's not just those students in their classroom, but it's the students in their reading group, it's the students that they see on the playground, it's the students that they meet in the hallway, or they see after school and SOAR. They're very committed and dedicated to the job that they do. And so in that job, they do everything they possibly can. And so by that process, by utilizing the MAP scores, which we do 3 times a year, SBAC is done once. The teachers don't even get the results until after school is out. So to be able to utilize that to adjust their instruction is impossible. When we look at year to year, we're not even looking at the same student comparison. And so while a teacher can use it as a general guideline to perhaps change their instruction, it does not give them the details or the information they need to do to adjust their instruction on a daily basis. And so that's why the MAPS is so vitally important to our teachers, because they use it in that manner to change on a daily or quarterly basis things that they're doing and what their kids need. So that's kind of my soapbox. I appreciate you giving me a chance to share that, but it is a process that has worked for us, and we're continuing that process, and I anticipate that we'll see some growth again. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, and I've been to your site quite a bit, and I always felt like I think everybody likes each other and likes coming to work, and they certainly are passionate about what they do. Can you explain how? I mean, I get it. There's one test a year. It's on one day. It sucks. But it's based on the Nevada Academic Content Standards, which squarely lays out how a child should progress over the year. So in theory, to me, between our curriculum, by the way, too, I think now that we have a math curriculum, that's going to make a big difference on our people. But so that those MAP scores and everything we're doing throughout the year to progress that student, shouldn't that lead into them demonstrating proficiency even on one day, or coming into that, or why does it get missed that day? Do we have that many having a bad day?
It does. The MAPs, when students take the MAPs, it breaks it down into different strands, and in those strands they get a RIT score. On the RIT score, it goes on to what's called a learning continuum, and it tells you exactly where the students are operating at. It'll also show you what skills they may not have yet to be proficient and what skills they need to do next. Teachers use that information to help them close that gap to where what they're currently doing and what they're expected at grade level. So you may have students that are not on grade level, but the teachers are utilizing that information to bring them up to that grade level point. In addition, the teachers are also looking at grade level information because they still have to have that content, but scaffolding it so they have access to that curriculum. If they don't provide that scaffolding and differentiate that instruction, the students don't have access to it. And so what happens often at your Title I schools is those students are coming into schools not quite ready at the same playing field. So respectfully, Mr. Swarsick, the students that are coming into Fritch and Boardwalk-Cambray are not on the same level as the students coming into Mark Twain or Fremont or Empire. They are the same age, but they do not have the same life experiences or support at home often that will allow them to be able to be successful in the classroom. That's why it's really great that we have the pre-K program. That's a whole other topic of discussion.
Well then, should Boardwalk-Cambray be a Title I school?
That's not my decision to make.
Well, no, I'm saying you're making a statement now.
I'm just saying not all the
demographics
at Empire and Mark Twain, we are 100% free and reduced lunch. And so that means all those students qualify for free and reduced lunch. And I don't know their exact percentage. I don't have their data point. But I'm just saying there's a difference with a large population of the students being able to be ready to come into school. Not every student's ready to come into school in the Boardwalk-Cambray coming with that same background, and not every student at Mark Twain comes in with a deficient background ability. But there is a large portion of them that are not, and that makes a difference.
And realizing that, but we're talking about Washoe and Clark in the same situation, and they seem to be above us. And why is that?
I can't answer. I'll tell you my theory, but since I don't have that, information at hand, I can just tell you that theory that I have. I know that the students at my school, that many of them come from families that are unable to support the learning. Not because they don't want to, and not because they don't desire to, and not because they don't want their student to be successful, but they don't have the tool sets in their home to be able to do that. Our job as educators is not just for the students, but also for the parents that try to help support them so they can help their children at home. And that's what we do with our teachers. Our teachers try not just teaching the students, but they're teaching the parents how to work with their kids at home. And so that's a deficit that takes more than a year to overcome. So when these students come in really low, it's going to take more than a year. And that's why I'm saying the process that we've done at Mark Twain, it's been a 4-year process to make this growth. It didn't just happen overnight. It's been slow and steady wins the race, slow and steady wins the race. We chunk it and we accomplish it. And so I hope that answers your question.
Well, and I just kind of wanted to bring us back because the original question where Trustee Green was asking about why growth on maps doesn't translate into the SBAC. And I think that one of the things that needs to be pointed out is there's a huge difference in the complexity of the two tests.
There is. So, for example, on the SBAC, the amount of material that a student needs to read is page after page after page for a third grader. So they're reading a very complex set of information. I can't tell you exactly because we just glance as we see them do it. We don't know exactly, but I can tell you as I look at their computer screens, I'm watching them scroll and scroll and scroll. So I know the amount of material that they need to read is a lot. In the maps, it doesn't seem to be that much. So one of the things that we looked at our site is how do we build up stamina with our kids? If this is what they have to accomplish, how do we build that stamina up? So that's the conversations that we're currently having at Mark Twain. And so those kind of differences are way more closely aligned. So the MAP test has been realigned recently. Ricky would be able to answer that better than I can. But you're seeing more similarities between the MAP testing and the SBAC testing than we've seen before. I can say at Mark Twain, our scores were more closely aligned this last year than ever before. Previously, we would always show we did really well on MAPs, and we didn't do very well on our CRTs or our SBAC. Last year, our scores were very closely aligned. They were like this. So it gave our teachers solid information to know what they needed to do to still prepare those students for SBAC. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Do we have any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you guys for letting me
I was
speak
looking for my email on the SBAC results that I had too, so that's why I was trying to compare those to see.
I do appreciate you letting me have the opportunity to
Yeah.
speak and
Yeah, I have that.
and talk about processes and how it's just going to be something that's going to take some time. And your goal and your desire to have these students be successful is the same goal we all have. And so as much as I'd like to reach that goal in a year, realistically, I know it's going to take a little bit of time. I know that if I can continue to make 5 point gains, 5 point gains, 5 point gains, that eventually, and sustain that growth, because that's the key there, is to sustain that so our students are successful. I know that's the same goal that you have.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Do we have any other comment? Mrs. Squires?
Thank you for allowing me some time to talk. I just wanted to share a couple of things. Of course, I'm going to stand up here in support of my teachers and my students at my school and the hard work that they put in on a daily basis. It's incredible to watch the amount of time and effort that these teachers put in. But I know we're not talking MAP data, but I want to share some MAP data with you because I do believe that it correlates to SBAC, and I do believe that if we continue on the path we're going, we're going to start to see some of those changes in the SBAC testing as well. One of the greatest things I think that has happened are the individual learning plans that Read by Grade 3 has asked us to put into place. Our teachers took those on K through 5 last year without an argument. Nobody said, why are 4 and 5 doing it? They did it because we asked them to do it and we believed it was what was good for kids. Last year we had 305 students who were on an individual learning plan K through 5. This year we have 215 students on an individual learning plan. So that's 100-ish less kids on an individual learning plan this year. 113 of those kids are grades 1st through 3rd. 40 of our students who were on an individual learning plan last year ended the year at or above the 39th percentile and came back this school year at or above the 39th percentile. So they did not lose what we had taught them over the summer. 220 out of 408 kids met their growth target on the MAP test when we took it in fall, from fall to fall. That's over half of our kids met their growth target when they took it in the fall this year. And 207 out of 408 of our students grew above the standard error on their MAP this year in reading when they took it this fall. And that's huge progress for our kids coming off of summer to take the MAP test in the fall and to start at that level. And so we're pretty proud of that, and I think that's worth sharing because of the effort that our teachers put in last year. We're seeing that transfer to this year, and I believe that that's going to continue this year, and we're going to see those numbers increase every single year because of the efforts that they put in, and I know that will transfer to SBAC. So I just wanted to be able to share that with you because that's good data.
Thank you. Do you have Trustee Cassiopolo?
Just a general comment. I want to make sure everybody knows too, I agree with you. I don't want the teachers and I don't want the administrators or the district folks to think, we think people obviously are doing a bad job. They're not doing a bad job. They're doing the best they can. But there's a frustration on your part, on our part, on Sue's part. We all want these kids to do better. We want to, these standardized tests, I think we all have our personal feelings about them, but they are what they are. Yeah. And other people are achieving, other schools are achieving, other schools aren't, but most schools and school districts and other states seem to be doing better than we're doing. And that's the frustration, but it's a balance of, again, I don't want anybody to think, that I feel they're not doing a good job or not doing the best they can. But we're just trying to find that light bulb that gets us from here to here. And it's a group effort. It's, I may throw out ideas and you're thinking, well, that guy's crazy, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. But I think everybody's got some points that, we need to consider. And at this point, I think everything's on the table. Because like Ron said, every year we keep going, well, next year we're hoping for better. We're doing all this stuff, but we're not seeing the growth in all these areas. SBAC's one of those areas. And it's a balance. And I guess in the end, what I want people to take away from this long-winded comment is we do appreciate what people are doing and trying to do. And I have a lot of respect for the teachers and the administrators and whatnot in our district. We just want to be part of the team, part of the solution to figure out, how we get everybody on an upward trajectory.
I appreciate that. I really do. But I do have to say that I don't know what it'll take for us to not think that way. We will always believe and feel, not believe maybe, but feel like it's a bit of an attack. I'm just going to say that personally because I feel that. I get red in the face. I feel my heart, start to race because we know how hard we're working, and I think we do, for the most part, believe that we're supported, but it's good for us to be able to get up here and at least share some of our good works with you.
Susan, and we know how hard you guys are working too. We really do.
But do you need other resources to make things happen?
I have to say, the meeting that Dr. Ward and myself and Ms. Stockery and Ms. Kima had yesterday was really a good meeting to be able to talk about. It was very encouraging because Dr. Ward and I felt like they were coming to us saying, you're the leaders at this school. What do you think your school needs, rather than this is what we think your school needs and we're going to bring this in. And it was really refreshing to sit there and have them listen to us and present to them the things we had really thought about that was going to be the best for our schools, based on what we know that our teachers need. And so that was a great encouragement for us. I think we have some great ideas and some plans. If we can move forward with those, we feel, Jennifer and I feel positive about that. So.
Then could you bring those back to the board sometime and let us know what they are?
Yes, and when they went through with the transformation grant, that is what we talked about. And so as we finalize that, then we'll know more, so we would love to share that.
I guess echo the rest of the board. If our teachers and staff think that we aren't supporting them, they're not listening to us. Because if anything, especially me, I've called out the district office, not teachers and staff, not administrators. And that's been everybody's take up here the whole time is we recognize there's a lot of work going on. So when you're practicing for something, you maximize all the time you have to practice and you become super efficient. And when you need to improve more, you have to either add more hours of the day or bring something else in. And I think that's what we're recognizing is we're maxed. So then that's what we're saying. What do we need? Do we need time? Do we need resources? And so this isn't, nobody's calling out teachers, not by any means, and I haven't heard it since I've been on this board. What we're saying is tell us what you need, put us in the game so we can get you what you need. Otherwise, we get reports every week that everything's going great, and then we get the same test scores all the time. Well, those two things don't jive.
Dr. Ward.
Jennifer Ward for the record. So I think there's a little bit of a reality in that component of we do share some of the blame. Everyone who's in education shares some of the blame. We have test scores. We're the ones that are working with our kiddos. So I know when you had said, Mr. Walker, about making sure we do it in a positive light, it's really hard to be positive about telling your staff that you're the lowest scoring school in the district. Based on, the state, they're looking at you as a transformation school. There's nothing positive that you can't sugarcoat that, right? And so when you look at authors like Jim Collins who say good to great, you have to address what it is. Put it out there and don't assign blame, but just accept responsibility. We have some data, we don't like it. What are we going to do about it within the capacity of our time to do it? We don't take our students home with us at night. We don't have a 24-hour model. Although sometimes I think that we might, considering the amount of time our teachers spend talking with parents in the evening when it's convenient for our parents and our families. And so I think there's just a reality of looking at what it is. I think when we look at comparable data with demographics with Washoe County and Clark County, it's a difficult thing because we're 6 elementaries. So if you look proportionately at elementaries in Clark and Washoe County, they have a proportionate amount of schools that are struggling. You know, when I look at that list, there's 2 on the transformation list from Carson City and 28 from Washoe County and 33 from Clark County, you know, and we're 2. So I think there is a reality part of that data set. It's not claiming blame or putting it out there. When Ms. Kima talks about synergy, that's that's our school main goal, is a sense of urgency and ownership. Because when we've had and time and effort put into giving an SBAC assessment a couple years ago and not receiving any data, no fault to anyone in this room. It was a state issue, right? And that's hard because the last data set that Fremont teachers were aware of was they're doing fine. So they kept that momentum, but we've missed a target. We were on an old system of assessment. When you look at change theory, it doesn't happen overnight. And it is really disheartening that the State Department, through their transformation grant, it's a 6-month grant. And typical turnaround is 3 years, 3 to 5 years to make a true systemic change, because you're looking at your kindergarten kiddos and you're working them up through the 4th grade, through the 5th grade, right? And what we're looking at is we already have kiddos that are struggling and they took the test last year. 2/3 of our students are going to take the next test and 1/3 is brand new. And so to see a monumental change is also unrealistic. When we talk about setting SMART goals with our students and our staff, we want them to be attainable. And so we do need to be smart about how we set our goals, how we look at our curriculum. You're right. We've had where our main contributor to our math curriculum is teachers pay teachers, right? So we've corrected that for our district. We're working through that part. We're trying through our transformation grant is not to add something more, but to maybe refine some practices, add some time and effort into, if this is an expectation, here's some more understanding about that expectation and why are you entering that data? Because if the data is being entered for somebody else, that's totally bogus. There's no reason to enter data if it's not useful for a teacher or for a student or for a parent. We have systems in place that can do that for that teacher, parent, and student, but the stakeholders need to understand that system a little bit more intensely. And part of that was my experience in Carson Middle School, understanding Mastery Connect. Why are we entering the data? Then you bring it up and a student can understand and tell you why they are self-assessing because they have data to back them up. That's something that this group that I'm working with hasn't done that yet. And it's yet. And that's what we're trying to instill in our students and our staff is we just haven't gotten there yet. Are we on the right trajectory? Absolutely. And the only way I could say that is because that's my belief. I wasn't there last year. I walked in, I'm working my own program. I've worked in this district a very long time and have been part of AYP and AYP jail and all the ramifications of being in a SIG grant, being raced to the top. If there's one thing that I'm well read in is school improvement grants and looking at what we're going to do differently for kids. But the main thing is to try and find a synergy. And that usually means that you have to come together and have a bonding moment. And that can be that negative, yeah, we're the lowest. You know, when we look at all the state indicators.
Well, and I think that's why I said it's going to take some real leadership to do it delicately and to do it professionally, because what we want to make sure is that everyone on board understands, from the teachers to the parents to the students, that we're not blaming anybody. What we're saying is we have to do better, and it's going to take all of us.
Right.
And that's going to take leaders, and that's what you all are, is that's going to be your job to do that in your schools respectively.
Well, and I'm not the most delicate. I'm not known for that, but I think that's part of it, is that you take the data, you don't lay blame and say, all right, let's go. Where are we going? Here's our target. Let's move it. And my assurance to the board is I'm going to do it. I mean, I'm not here just to run teachers ragged through school improvement and transformation grants by any means. It should be smarter work, not harder work. And really and truly, the time that we spent with the 4 of us yesterday, it was what is going to get us the biggest turnaround with not adding more to a plate, but to maybe shift things around and make it smarter, a little bit easier, if you will, to understand, so that it's an easier expectation for if teachers know where we're going and they're able to communicate it to their students and their parents, then you can get your parents to also buy in and what they can do to support. It's a systemic issue, and it is not going to be solved in a week, and it's not going to be solved by the transformation grant. It's a process, and I'm in it to win it with my teachers and my entire staff, as well as my students, as well as my parents. And part of it is we just have to accept those scores. That's our baseline. That's where we're starting. And I know that we've had a dip at Fremont, and they are well aware of it. I wasn't there at that time, so I can't explain what and why. And that's kind of a good part. And in transformation, big districts, they put in a new administrator to, start fresh. We got that just because I got this job, so I'm excited at the opportunity to make it flourish into a school that everyone would be proud to send their students to, and continue to have pride in the school district and pride in what we do on a day-to-day basis. And that includes the kiddos that are struggling and struggle when they come into school with very little language or very little ability to communicate in any language. And to be able to exit and be okay with ready for my 5th graders to go to Carson Middle School or Eagle Valley, and understand what it takes to be successful at those 2 institutions as well. So.
We have any? Thank you very much. So do you have anything else, Dr. Medina? Are we? I think we've had quite a few questions and quite a few discussions.
Okay, so Madam President, just going forward. Going forward, again, where I started this 6.5 years ago, each year we were going to do this, this, and this, which would improve score. We're at the same place. We've essentially are not there. We're not blaming, putting fault on anyone, but it's happened. And I'll come back to schools, it doesn't happen. Can you bring us back something, just as a board, that has to do with resources? At Boardwalk Bray, if they have all these resources, and we heard about all this stuff, after-school program, what is it? If it's synergy, I don't know what we do about that, but we've got to do something. Because we have the models, it's happened. So could you bring us back something, what Susan said, and what is it? You met yesterday. What is it that is needed for the benefit of these kids and teachers going forward? We can't keep showing up each year or year after year. Other schools are in the same situation we are. What is that magic? We're not looking for a perfect world, but we are looking for significant improvement. So can you bring us, maybe a month, just bring us back something that we as a board, what can we do to help?
At risk of sounding like a broken record, and I'll just say that what I keep pushing for is, and I think we probably need to start increasing the amount of flexibility and creativity that our teachers are allowed to use in the classroom, because what we're hearing from more and more teachers is they're heavily scripted, and I think that if our data is flatlining, then I think that this might be a time to start doing some experiments and some studies to see if maybe there's some other approaches that can be applied in the classroom.
Thank you all for the discussion. If there's no further comments, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 9. Everybody ready? Adoption of the Carson City School District test procedures and security plan for the 2017-2018 school year as required by NRS 390.275 for possible action. Susan Kima.
Susan Kima for the record. State law requires that school districts create and submit a test security plan that is modeled after the state's test security plan. Upon approval tonight, I will be submitting our district's test security plan to the Legislative Council Bureau as required per NRS 392.275. The purpose of the plan is to uphold the integrity of state-mandated testing and to ensure or maintain consistent test it's too late tonight already, test administration procedures. Once the plan is approved and I submit it, the next test directors meeting, I'll be training our site test directors on our district security plan, and then they will be able to take this information and develop their own plan for the state. There's been some considerable changes this year. The state has been able to have the opportunity to work with a national test security organization, and there's been quite a bit of clarity in this document from years past. For example, there was always a question what to do with medical professionals that must stay with the student when no other adults were allowed in the classroom besides the test proctor and the administrator. So now we're just making sure we train them and that they sign a confidentiality agreement. We've got that documented in this test security manual. Also, there must be, usually when you see the changes made from the state, there might have been some test irregularity issues around certain topics. For example, there's a section in there about who can photograph a testing environment, and there must have been something going on out there and somewhere, because it does indicate that only a site administrator or a test coordinator or myself can photograph a testing session if we're in the middle of an investigation for test irregularities. Also, the state now requires, it used to be that when you were done with your test irregularity investigation, you sent in your paperwork. But now the state wants us to send it in midway through, and I think that's to consult and to help the districts before the final word has been given. That's no change for us. I've done that. Every time that I have a test irregularity, I always consult with Carol Mason just to make sure my paperwork doesn't get kicked back. So that's no change, but it's documented in there. NWA map information has been added to the district plan because it's now required for read by 3. And end of course information has been minimized because it is not a high stakes test anymore. More detail will come on the end of course specifically in October. Usually at this time, so I don't want to go page by page, but usually at this time too, I give the results of test irregularities from the previous year. Usually the biggest test irregularity with the state and with the district is cheating, but this year it was improper test administration by adults. And that was the same for the state. I contribute this as well as in the state documents. They contribute this to all the changes in the statewide testing system. There's a lot more detail than handing a student a paper, a booklet, and a pencil. There's a lot more detail to all this electronic testing that needs to be cleared up. SBAC has its set of rules, and of course has its set of rules. ACT has its own set of rules, those kinds of things. So in our district, we had 6 incidents. 4 were improper test administration, and 2 were student cheating. Student cheating went directly to cell phones being on their lap while they had the test and not turning them in. And so those were very simple, straightforward items. And even though every year I tell the test coordinators that at the start, like October 5th when we start meeting again, I'll tell them again, I want 0, I mean a big goose egg, 0 test irregularities. These things happen. So to put our numbers in perspective, we had last year about 7,500 students participate in multiple assessments administered in grades K through 12 and in our adult ed and prison programs. Nearly 11,000 tests were administered in 14 locations within our district. So to only have 6 incidents regarding within that 11,000 test number is pretty good. So if there's no questions, I recommend approval.
Do we have any questions, or are we ready for a motion?
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees adopt the Carson City School District test procedures and test security plan for the 2017-2018 school year as submitted in accordance with NRS 390.275.
Second.
Motion by trustee Cassiopo, seconded by trustee Green. Do we have any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 10, report on the types of services provided to Carson City School District by Northwestern Regional Professional Development Program, NWRPDP, for the 2016-2017 school year for discussion only. Susan Kima.
Susan Kima for the record. The Northwestern Regional Professional Development Program serves as the professional development arm of the Nevada Department of Education. There are 3 regional RPDPs, if you will, funded through the legislature to support the Nevada Department of Education's initiatives, such as the rollout of the Nevada Academic Content Standards, such as the rollout of the teacher and administrator evaluation model. Those other 2 regions are over in the Elko area and, of course, down south by Las Vegas. Our region covers Washoe County, Story County, Churchill, Lyon County, Douglas, and ourselves. Each district contributes a trainer, depending on at least one trainer, depending on their size of a district. Jackie McCune, she's been before the board last year, maybe several times with science and math information. She is a former Fremont teacher. She's our representative to the RPDP training team. RPDP services that were the major focus last year was spent on computer education and technology, and the academic content standards for science and math. Mrs. McCune worked with elementary STEM teachers or coaches developing curriculum, supporting materials adoption, rolling out training for both the math and science materials, and will continue to do so. She also was required to do background work through the organization to prepare us. We're going to be setting up some meetings here shortly because computer science is required in all grades starting next fall. And so for our administrators, the main focus, it's not just Mrs. McCune providing us services, it's other administrators, teaching administrators. Our biggest focus there was training our administrators on the Nevada Education Performance Framework, which is the new evaluation model, and that will again continue on through this school year. You can see by the Appendix F on the services summary that our staff who participate in training with the RPDP organization rates them pretty high as far as quality of training. You can also see in the graph, or in the charts on the second page, you can see where the training focuses were. I think what you'll see for this next year, there's going to be an uptick in ELA. We're going to be utilizing those services more because of where we're at with our ELA scores for the SBAC, our previous agenda item, as well as right now we've been working on some close reading, as you talked about, Mr. Walker, doing other things, working on some close reading strategies with RPDP helping our implementation specialists. We'll be also having them support us during our professional development days. This is not a This is not an agenda item that requires board approval, but it is a compliance report that I'm expected to give. And after tonight, I will be submitting it to the required state agencies per NRS 391.556 on your behalf.
Do we have any questions or comments?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
On the handout on the graphic page 133, under type of service, we have training and service class, we have consulting, but observing and coaching, it looks like we have almost none. Does that make sense? I mean, you can teach, give classes, but unless you observe, how do you know that it's being effective?
And that's a good point. Under the consulting, it was 46%. Under the training and in service, it was 53%. Yeah. And under the observing and coaching, it was 1%. Yeah. So what was happening last year, the majority of the work was still training our teachers on the learning targets. And in the beginning of the year, it was on the Pearson product that we adopted for math and the TCI product that we adopted for science. I think in next year's data, you're going to see a lot more observing and coaching, because now that we have the products out, we have the learning targets out, now it's time to be in the classroom to observe the teachers, to make sure that they're implementing that. This is also not just teachers, it's also administrators. And our administrators, such as, some of the administrators that were here tonight, have asked RPDP to meet with them every 3 weeks to help them with the observing and the coaching strategies that they'll use with their teachers. So I agree with you, Mr. Swarzak. I think that now that there's some of that background work that was done with math and science, we're going to see more observing and coaching that way. And then I noticed with what's happening with the administrators, more of them are taking advantage of the RPDP services to support them in their administrative leadership roles.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Do we have any public comment? Okay, go ahead and move on to agenda item 11. Report on the Carson City School District School Progressive Discipline Plan District Implementation Report as required by NRS 392.4644 and SB 386 for discussion only. Susan Kima.
Susan Kima for the record. This agenda item is a report of compliance per NRS to the board. Each side is expected to submit to my office a progressive discipline plan in June preceding the following academic year. The plans are reflected in our course catalogs, in the PTs, and parent communications, as well as the website. By February 15th, a plan revisions and staff training must be completed, which is another reason why administrators need time with staff at the beginning of the school year to go over what's changed in their discipline plan. On or before October 15th, I must notify you, the Board of Trustees, that all plans have been submitted to my office. I'm also expected to inform you if we have any administrators who are out of compliance. It is my pleasure to let you know that all plans have been submitted to my office electronically and that every administrator or principal is in compliance with NRS 392.4644. This is not an action item. However, I will use today's date to represent the day our district was in compliance with NRS. If there's no further questions, I'll submit the required report to the Nevada Department of Education Safe Learning Environment office tomorrow.
Ron, you have a question?
Just as a matter of clarification, it's just technical on the progressive discipline plan on your first page, district implementation report, and you're given the background. On the second page, just on the Legislative Council Bureau, could you maybe change that council to C-O-N-S-E-L? It's not spelled council like that. Just maybe.
I'll bring that to their attention.
Yes, would
This
you
is
do
a
it?
state document
Yeah,
that
I
was
know it's
sent in their
probably
memo.
yeah.
I'll bring that to their,
It's
I have a
kinda
good
like,
working relationship with that department. I'll
charge of that?
I'll bring that to their attention,
Just
but
so I know
thank you
that.
very much. I'll be, when I send this off, I'll call it. I'll talk to them and let them know.
Let them know.
Sure.
Thanks.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Do we have any further questions or discussion on this? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 12, discussion and possible action on selecting a topic for the 2017-2018 Carson City School District Board of Trustees sponsored American Citizen Essay Contest. For possible action, Mr. Stokes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. The American Essay Contest has gone on for a number of years, and I believe you're all relatively familiar with it. So given the lateness of the hour, I'm not going to go through the detail that you've been able to read for yourselves. We're at that place in the academic year when typically the trustees selects a topic for our students to write on. And of course, it's not only our students, it's anybody who's in the area that is homeschooled or going to private or charter schools. And so we invite anybody to participate. One of the things that's not in here is an amount, oh yes it is, a dollar amount, but I was asked earlier whether or not there is money to cover this cost, and I believe that we do have in our gifts and donations account the ability to cover this this cash prize. So with that, I turn the time over to the trustees. Yeah, Mr. Green.
I thought that we discussed, all of us, like doing one of our paychecks for the month into that. Did that ever happen, or? I don't handle that at my house.
No, that was brought up, but it wasn't anything that we didn't decide on anything with that, and I think we were made aware that there was money in the gifts and donations to cover it. I know a few years ago, our board was awarded the School Board of the Year and from NASB, and there was $1,000. Oh, we didn't put it into this. That we put it into the McKinney-Vento fund, that $1,000, didn't we? I'm thinking.
Yeah,
I was thinking it went to this because I think that was how they originally started the fund, was years ago. But I think when we won that, it went to McKinney-Vento. So that's something we can look into and discuss if there's any appetite for that. Go ahead.
At this point, I believe that the district can cover the costs of the student cash prizes.
I think that's what I recalled, is we asked a question as to whether or not there was adequate funding, and I think we made the comment that we might be willing to do that, and the district countered with, we're okay.
Well, do we have any, I saw Trustee Carini handed out a suggestion earlier. Do we have anyone who'd like to suggest a topic that they feel particularly strongly about?
Well, it's first I want to say that I do like the DACA one. I think that would be really interesting. But I don't know if we could, when we were talking about the flu shots earlier, it dawned on me, because my wife and I have this discussion every year, because I don't do a flu shot, she does. And she advocates it's part of citizenry, like the community, whatever she called it, community immunity. So it got me thinking, well, it might be a good opportunity to advertise the flu shot in a way to have them, I don't know how it would be, but like, does getting the flu shot make you a better citizen in your community or something? I know I'm stretching it there, but that just dawned on me. I know it's weak, but it's something different that my household argues about every year. But
Mike, did you have it?
Well, I personally like number 2, the land of liberty, and I think we have to remember this goes for all levels of school, and so we want it to be something that's broad so that the little guys can write about it as well as the seniors in high school, and so that's my only concern with the other suggestion.
So in this particular case, Trustee Walker, the error is mine. We've actually written about that particular topic in the year 2014, and we listed this this particular topic along with number 11. So those need to be removed unless you'd like the students to write about them again. So we included those in error where they have been written about in the past.
And, and another thing that's kind of timely right now with what's going on between the NFL and the president is saluting the flag and the national anthem, and so maybe the American flag, what it means to me, and that seems to be something that's hot on everybody's minds right now, so.
Yeah, I do feel like we kind of did that last year with the controversy refusing to stand during the national anthem, so I kind of feel like that would be similar. I'm going to throw one out that I like, if you guys want to hear. I like number 9, because I think this citizenship essay contest was started after the events of 9/11, so I would add an extra question. Did the events of September 11th change how we look at heroism? And then say, think of someone in your life who's a hero, why? And just do something like that. Just because to tie back, this whole generation of kids was born, all of the students now were born after September 11th, so that would be perhaps lead to discussions on what that was.
Well, first of all, I liked your comment. I have the same thoughts that Trustee Walker has. I think it's a great topic, probably for the older kids. I think the younger kids might struggle with this, but I think it's timely and would be interesting. I always like to get the kids' perspectives. But I was looking at the list and I was torn between 9 and 10. But I was leaning towards 10, discuss the significance of patriotism in your life and how certain events have changed the way you perceive the US of A. I think given everything that's on TV, people have some strong opinions as we're seeing, and I think, as I mentioned, I'm always interested to see what the students' take on these things are. So anyway, my first choice would be 10, my second choice would be 9.
Well, in looking, at the list and thinking of others, I like number 8. We the people. What does that really mean? What does we the people really mean? And especially to our students.
With the doc, because I think you set up the explanation quite a bit on the doc. I like to think that maybe it'd be too much for the kid, but I think that it's so in the news, and I think with our population at our schools, I have a feeling even our elementary kids actually know this and probably understand it more than we think they do. Is it a wording thing, or do you think I'm off there?
No, Can we simplify it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just threw it out there, and I honestly, my first year, don't know a lot about the essay contest. I didn't know as far as ages and things like that, so just threw it out there.
To me, every single year, especially what comes out of the elementary level, I'm blown away. Like the winning essays are always incredible. It's and stuff you don't think about, and they're coming out of children. So I think sometimes they're really surprising.
What if you simplified it to be something like the American dream, what it means to me? And then that would, those that wanted to talk about DACA, you'd open it up to whatever level the students are at.
Well, we did kind of
Did we do that one?
Well, and I'm wondering if you even said, how was the American dream influenced by immigration? Or tying in immigration into something along those lines, and then you're kind of tying in this in a not so technical way,
Are we, I guess my question would be, are we leaning towards trying to make this a topic, or?
I don't know that I don't know that I'm leaning towards it. I'm just trying to make it, I think it's too big and too wordy this way, so I was trying to offer something.
Yeah, I was thinking
And
if we
I kind of
went.
like the simple things for the kids, because they bring a lot to the topic.
I think, so to serve it up for Ron, is this sort of what you're getting at with that though too? Is the we the people is, it really encompasses the diversity of the country.
Yeah. To me,
Stacy Jr.
yeah. We the people. And it looks simple on his face, but what does it mean?
And I'm just thinking of the American Dream because I helped my honors English student read Of Mice and Men and discuss the American Dream in that. And so that's all on my brain right now. So I don't know. Do we want to take a vote on a favorite? So far we've got 8, 9, and 10. Two were mentioned for 9, 1 for 8, one. Do we want to pick one to vote on and just go with that? To see where we're at? Or does anybody want to throw out another number?
Well, I just think that, I mean, listening to this, number 8 could encompass any of those topics.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really open to the creativity of the writer. And so it's really open-ended. So we said we wanted to see what the students brought to it. They could write about heroism. They could write about immigration. They could write about,
The Declaration.
yeah, however the American Dream has influenced their life. I mean, it's kind of open-ended enough that we might get a real diverse selection of entries.
Okay. Okay. My only comment would be put the comma in between the quotation marks on that one.
Tell me however you want.
But does anyone want to make a motion? Or do we want to do a poll vote first?
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve We the People, What It Means to Me as the topic for the 2017-18 board-sponsored American Citizen Essay Contest.
I'll second.
Okay. Motioned by Trustee Walker, seconded by Trustee Carini. Do we have any further discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wonder if one of the kids in our district will talk about the big dog on campus.
Top
with
dog?
This one. Top dog.
The lead dog.
Lead dog. Lead dog.
And what it means to me.
And just, I would comment, I'm looking at how are they written before. Some of them were, there was a dash after them or a semicolon, and all in quotations. You could do something like that, although it is quoted. So anyway, we can play with how it's written, so it looks nice. Okay, any public comment on this? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. We the People, What It Means to Me, it is.
Thank you. And so the timeline that was in your packet will go into practice and play tomorrow. Thank you.
We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 13, discussion and possible action on proposal to eliminate Carson City School District Policy 529, public performances by students. Second reading for possible action. Susan Kima.
Susan Kima for the record. The proposal to be presented to the Board of Trustees this evening is to eliminate Policy 529, public performance. The necessary information for overnight field trips is located in the newly revised Policy 213, which is titled Field Trips. If you don't have any questions, I request your approval.
Ready? Go ahead.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve September 26, 2017 as the eliminated date on CCSD Policy 529, public performance by students.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Casiopo, second by Trustee Walker. Do we have any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved. We'll go on to agenda item 14, discussion and possible action to approve proposed changes to Carson City School District Policy 527, student fundraising, second reading for possible action. Susan Kima.
Susan Kima for the record. Policy 527 was reviewed by district administrators and was considered current practice. There was some formal language around addressing the Carson City School Board of Trustees that was added and some other cleanup language that the board suggested. There is one missing, though. In that first paragraph, in that last line, as we were reviewing the minutes, we realized we missed, as such solicitations may disrupt the program. It should say programs, That was a suggestion by Mr. Walker, the last board meeting, and should the board approve this policy, we will make sure that correction's there before we send it out.
I just had a thought reading it to that last sentence on the same first paragraph. Just that compulsory attendance laws make the students captive prospective donors, as such solicitations may disrupt the program of the schools. I'm wondering if "and" rather than "as" is better there.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll make that change as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other suggestions or a motion?
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees adopt the revisions as presented and with changes noted, and approve September 26, 2017 as a revised date on CCSD Policy 527, student fundraising.
Second.
Motion by trustee Walker, seconded by trustee Casiopo. Any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor? Aye. Aye, and the motion is approved. And we'll go on to agenda item 15, discussion and possible action on proposal to eliminate Carson City School District Policy 909, solicitation of students, second reading for possible action. Susan Kima.
Finally, Susan Kima, finally done. The proposal is to delete this policy. The goal is to consolidate policies and regulations so that all necessary information is located in the same section of the Carson City School District Policy and Regulations Manual. The information on Policy 909 has been incorporated in Regulation 521.1, which we covered in the previous board meeting.
Make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve September 26, 2017 as the eliminated date on Carson City School District Policy 909, solicitation of students.
Second.
Okay. Motion by trustee Carini, seconded by trustee Swerzik. Do we have any further discussion or questions? Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and go on, thank you, Susan, to agenda item 16, approval of consent agenda for possible action. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment that my firm has an item under 16A, so since I have a I can never say that word. Pecuniary interest, I'm going to abstain from voting.
Okay, thank you, trustee Casiopo.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion by trustee Walker, seconded by trustee Swerzik. Do we have any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved with trustee Casiopo abstaining. And we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 17, informational items for discussion only. No action will be taken. Do we have any questions or comments on the informational items? None? Ron, do you, or you just have your microphone on? Okay. I thought maybe you were coming up with something. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 18, requests for future agenda topics. Do we have any requests for future agenda topics at this time?
Well, I think it's what we talked about with the SBAC discussion, that those, recommendations are brought forward. And I think it follows what Joe said. How do we're all part of this, but it's all coming one way. We need to have something that we can then help, improve this. So an action by the board. So.
And I'm just kind of wondering if it wouldn't be better to start as a workshop as opposed to us sitting up here and getting a presentation and voting on something. If we want to be part of the solution, maybe the first step is to do like a workshop with the administrators, maybe a select number of teachers, and start gathering data that way before we just vote on something that might not have any merit.
And that would have to be after you come back from Europe, though. We don't want to.
just.
No, that's a good idea. I mean, it's a good suggestion.
Just a question with the transformational grants that the schools are applying for. Do we need to approve those? No. Okay, but any information in them could be presented to us, perhaps in a work?
Yes.
Okay. Joe?
Sue, this year, didn't we just incorporate that Brigance testing at the kindergarten level?
Yes.
Maybe we can just get a report on how that went, I mean, compared to the map testing they did, and are there, how are we gonna use the results and whatnot? I mean, I don't know, I don't know much about it except we did it, so I was just curious.
We certainly can. I was thinking that we would coordinate that information when we present the map information for Read by 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other requests for future agenda topics, we will adjourn this meeting. Agenda item 19, we're done.